We are one day away from the NFL draft. What questions do you have? What answers will we get when it's all said and done? And what is the latest word of the day that we're all using to describe the Brock Purdy contract situation? We'll talk about it all next on today's Gold Standard Podcast. What is good, everybody? Welcome to another Gold Standard Podcast. I'm Rob Stats Guerrera. If you're watching the stream, you can see I am joined by a very special guest from the Bay Area News Group. Don't play coy with me, Dieter Kurtenbach. We know you are a very special guest.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm not sure if we do all know that, but I'm very happy to be here today and looking forward to talking some Niners.
Thank you very much for joining us. A lot to get to. John Lynch spoke yesterday. Brock Purdy showed up yesterday to the 49ers,
Yes.
which was very nice. And look, we'll get to the Brock Purdy stuff in a minute, but we are a day away from the draft. So that's where I want to begin. John Lynch had his press conference and he said something super early in the press conference that when I heard it, I kind of like did a double take almost. And I want to play it for you and I want to get your reaction. Here's the thing John Lynch said that really surprised me.
Consensus is a big part of it, and I think it's a big part of the successes we've had. And when we've maybe tailed off from, not having consensus is maybe when we've made some of our things we wish we could have back. So it's something we strive for.
Two things. First of all, I think it's very, very clear. John Lynch has a new buzzword. For years, I made fun of him because it was
Convicted.
And now this year, Dieter, we've got
Consensus.
That's his new favorite word when it comes to the draft.
He heard convicted was out, so he found a synonym that works just as well. In fact, it might even be a little bit lighter. We want to make sure that everybody gets in on the conviction this time around.
But that was the really interesting thing. He said when we break from consensus, that's where we've had the picks that we want to take back. And my first thought was, well, there's only two guys that could make them break from consensus. One is the owner, Jed York, and the other is Kyle Shanahan. Am I crazy in thinking that?
No, not in the least bit. And I thought immediately to Kyle, right? The way that the 49ers have structured their draft in prior years, and I do know they got away from this last year, which ironically was their best draft perhaps in the Shanahan-Lynch era, was first round, everyone had to be in agreement. That's cool, right? And sometimes that's worked and sometimes that's bombed out. That's how it's going to go. We can get into all that stuff a little bit later. Certainly we've talked about it ad nauseum to this point. Second round, that was John's round. Third round was Kyle's round. And guess what round has typically sucked? Now, I will say Fred Warner, third round, so couldn't have been all that bad. But Kyle got his pick. John got his pick. Everyone got a piece of the pie, except some people are better at this than others. And it will be interesting to see how they handle it this year. I know that because of the brain drain that they've had in recent years with so many people from the front office, a lot of folks that day-to-day fans don't know about, but are very important in these very important days that are the NFL draft. With those folks leaving, some of which have come back already, John has had to take on more of the day-to-day role, and Kyle has willingly step back a little bit, seeing some of the errors in his drafting ways. But it is interesting that they're now saying that they need to be about consensus. And at 11, it'll be interesting to see who that consensus falls upon, because I think this draft is falling in their favor right now. They're going defensive line, I'll tell you that. I don't know who they're going to take because I don't know what the hell the Raiders and the Jets are going to do, but it looks like this could be a very favorable position for the 49ers at 11 to get somebody who can immediately help them and give them that long-term boost that they're looking for as well.
That is fascinating to me. And by the way, if you have questions for Dieter, throw them in the chat. We'll get to as many as we can. But that just seems like what you just said. That seems like a bizarre way to run your draft. You get to make the pick this round. Why wouldn't you want to go with the consensus every round?
I think it was in general so that everyone felt like they had involvement, but because consensus is hard to find, right?
Yes.
Like I go on Larry Krueger streams and he and I are arguing about Michael Williams versus Shamar Stewart. I can't even get the names right. They've melded into one in my brain. Both of them have their positives. Both of them have their negatives. The more people you get into a room, the more that you're going to have two camps on things. Nothing is empirical. Nothing is obvious. If it was obvious, everyone would be good at this. And everyone, the Niners wouldn't have drafting issues. No team would have drafting issues. So getting a consensus is extremely difficult to do. And if you are a team that just needs to make some picks, and early on, particularly, the Niners just needed to make some picks. We need to get talent in the building. We're going to mess up on some, but we got nothing to lose. We got to bring some folks in. If they had to go around and ask everybody at the table what they thought every time, they might have not gotten picks in. Shout out to the Minnesota Vikings back in the day. So I think that was part of the process. You're also dealing with a first-time GM, a first-time head coach in that case, who had full control over personnel, which, Bill Belichick had it. Bill Belichick had been in the league my entire life, plus my entire life. So he had earned it at that point, to be sure. Like, Kyle Shanahan's coming in. He's barely over 30, and he has full control of the San Francisco 49ers. Like, these are the mistakes that were made early. By the way, they were within the Super Bowl within 2 years, so it couldn't have been that bad. But ultimately, this is a new iteration of the old guard at this point for the 49ers, and how they go about their business. It's a lot more John. It's a lot less Kyle, at least around draft day. Now, the question is there a little bit more Jed than usual? We know Jed really stepped in when it came to the pick number 3 in 2021. Everyone needs to wear that one. Absolutely awful. I need to wear it a little bit. I was suggesting they should take Trey Lance. I was wrong. Kyle was wrong. John was wrong. There were a couple people in the building who said, don't do it. Clearly, they didn't get the full consensus, but Jed wanted Trey Lance as well, and he had a lot more influence that year than in the last few years I can remember. Maybe that's a reaction to the Trey Lance thing. Jed had or at least Parag had a very serious hand in free agency this year. I'm interested to see if that carries into the draft and what Jed's model of consensus is compared to John's model of consensus, because I think John wants to bring everybody in and make everyone feel good. And I think Jed thinks whatever Jed thinks is the consensus. So we'll see how that plays out on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday.
Okay, well, that's interesting. Well, number one, I hadn't heard that Jed had been involved in the Trey Lance pick. That is maddening and ridiculous and annoying.
It was such a big pick that this is a John problem. He wanted to make sure that everyone was on the same page with who we're going to take, which, by the way, is the third best quarterback in a bad quarterback draft. Like, when you're trading up, just go to one. But that's neither here nor there. It's over now. But yes, Jed had and that's why Jed was like tweeting through it at the time, if you remember, because he was all involved and we're all going to get together on this one. Most years, Jed is not as involved because Jed doesn't care about pick 29 or 31. But at 3, with 3 first-round picks on the line, yeah, he showed up to work that day. And again, he, as much as everybody else, needs to wear it. There was nobody who was exonerated at a position of power when it came to Trey Lance. And again, I think the fan base and the media for certain needs to wear it as well, because it went bad for everyone. We all missed it. Who could have seen that coming out of COVID, that we all missed something? But this year, I'm just curious to see how involved the true front office, the money, is in this, because they were overly involved in free agency. The budget was the budget. Doesn't matter if you got to pay for a quarterback. You get $300 million more or less a year. And we got to put $150 in escrow if we're going to sign Brock Purdy. So there's your budget. Figure out how to get all the players you need for the $300 million that I'm giving you every year. That's a pretty serious thing. You would think that there would have been an exception made this season for the annual budget, seeing as the NFL is handing out money. I mean, they can't get rid of the money that they have fast enough. It is so flush. It's the best stock market in the world. And yet the budget is the budget. So it'll be interesting to see if that carries over into the draft as well.
One thing has always held true with the 49ers, regardless of the coach, regardless of the players. The more Jed York is involved, the worse they are. The worse.
Can't fire owners.
Right. Like, it's it. And I talked with Mike Florio the other day, and he mentioned that he thinks that Kyle Shanahan sort of masks a lot of the dysfunction that comes with the Jed York ownership. And I thought that was really interesting. And I kind of agree. The more Jed is involved, the worse it gets for the Niners.
Well, there's a pretty clear track record of that. And I think that Mike is correct. I wouldn't phrase it the same way. I think that Jed got lucky. I think that Jed got extremely lucky. Now, Jed gave up a lot in terms of he had been chastised so heavily by the fan base and just the results, right? It was Jed's call to fire. I'm never going to call it anything else, to fire Jim Harbaugh. Okay. I understand that Jim Harbaugh wears out his welcome everywhere he goes. Jim Harbaugh's a hell of a football coach. He also wins everywhere he goes. So one bad year and a couple of comments, let's leave it at that. And Jed's like, nope, I'm taking control again. He takes control. He brings in his Steve Kerr in Jim Tomsula, a sentence so hilarious that people actually have to look it up to understand what I'm talking about, because I sound like a stupid person, which sometimes I do. But in this case, that was something that Jed York said at Jim Tomsula's introductory press conference, that he was their Steve Kerr. He was fired after a year. He brings in Chip Kelly, who is the exact opposite of Jim Tomsula, and not better, just the opposite. That didn't work out. And Jed, who I was writing for Fox Sports at the time as a national columnist, like, Jed was an easy money traffic guy. All you had to do was go in on Jed. He was the clear problem with the 49ers. And he goes, fine, what can I do? I am going to give a never before head coach the head coaching job, personnel, and a 6-year contract. And he gets to pick his own GM. He gets full say. He gets the entire house. And it worked out wonderfully for him. It worked out fantastic. And Jed slips away. But what happens the year that they come out of COVID 2020, bad year? We all can acknowledge why it was a bad year. But guess who's involved a little bit more this year? Here's Jed again. You know how I was gone when everything was going great? I'm back now that it's bad. And then, just like it was with Harbaugh, and then guess what? They go and they win 6 games this year, a little less excusable to be sure. But guess who's back? Here's Jed. You're 100% right. Anytime Jed gets involved, one, things are going bad because he doesn't show up when the times are going well, which might be a correlation there. But yeah, it doesn't get any better when Jed shows up. I'll tell you that right now.
Frustrating, but okay.
Maybe the damage has already been done, though, because the free agency thing was completely laughable and it was completely about ownership. And I know there was a lot of frustration from 49 on the people who don't have access to the money, but wanted to spend it, that they couldn't because they thought there were some good deals to be made. But maybe that damage is already done because the draft isn't really about money. So maybe Jed has nothing to do with it.
Well, let's all hope. Jed, you could just sit there and watch, okay? We don't need anything else out of you.
Just keep making your money, buddy. You'll be fine. Go buy a soccer team.
Your only job is to sign your name on the checks. That's it. That's all you have to do. And sit back and fall ass backwards into money, which, by the way, you already hit the hereditary lottery anyway.
Unbelievable.
Into money.
But you know, it's a big thing. Second generation, right? Look at what's going on with the Cowboys. Look at what's going on with the 49ers. I know the Niners like to say that they're on the Rams path. I think they might be on the Cowboys path. This draft is going to really decide which route they go. Because if they nail the draft, hey, you can sell me on Rams. If they don't nail the draft, buddy, it's got Cowboys written all over it.
I mean, they sort of are the Cowboys. They just happen to get to the NFC Championship game in the Super Bowl. The Cowboys have a more recent Super Bowl win. Just that's the reality.
That's a great point. Damn, I hadn't actually put 2 and 2 together on that one. That is ruthless.
Well,
that's ruthless. That's good.
The truth hurts. What can I say?
Yeah.
All right.
Hey, facts.
Let's dive into the draft. One of the things I did recently was become a member of the Dieter and Hutch YouTube channel because you get access to what I can only describe as the most unique draft guide that I have ever read, and I have read a lot of them.
Yes.
I love your draft guide. And just to give people, a little peek behind the curtain here as I pull up the Cam Skattebo quote.
Chungus Maximus.
Chungus Maximus. And then if you scroll down, it says shades of, and one of the comparisons is Mike Allstott without neck roll powers.
Yes.
Yes. Pump this draft guide into my veins. I love it. I recommend everybody go to the channel, but there's a ton of guys I want to ask you about. And since I happen to pull up Skattebo, let's just go there.
Sure.
You have him as the 14th running back on the board. Can we get this guy at day 3? Because I'm going to be honest, I love Cam Skattebo.
I think there's going to be enough teams in the league that feel the same way you do, because running back is a very subjective. There's not, some positions it's just objective. There's objective dudes and there's objective busts. Running back is so scheme dependent and running back coach temperament dependent, and running back's a tricky one to do. Ultimately, we're always going to be biased. Both my partner Jake Hutchinson and I, we're going to be biased towards guys who can run what the 49ers run, that outside zone, and have that 10-second burst and all that. 10-yard burst. Regardless, I think that there's going to be teams that play maybe a bit more gap football that are going to value Skattebo far more than both Hutch and myself do, but also more than the 49ers do. He doesn't feel like a scheme fit. And you have to also take into account what they already have. They have a Patrick Taylor. They have an Isaac Guerendo. I don't think they're looking for another big running back, even though Guerendo doesn't play that way. I think that they're looking maybe for somebody who's a little bit smaller, a little more classic third down, maybe a little bit more of the McCaffrey mold if we're going to go pie in the sky. And Scatterbo, he's got a lot of positive traits. He was fun as hell to watch at Arizona State, but the athleticism numbers do not line up with what the 49ers usually value. And the tape it leaves you wanting, at least in my opinion, when you watch him against elite guys. It's easy to run in the Big 12. Let's leave it at that.
Okay, fine. Dash my hope.
Listen, he's fun. I can say this. He's going to play in the NFL. How much, I couldn't tell you. But if he finds himself in the right circumstance, in the right scheme, he could be a really fun player. I just don't see it happening for the 49ers. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Like, none of this is empirical. But he's not my personal cup of tea. And I don't think that the Niners view him very highly. I haven't heard any buzz about them and him from anybody who like in terms of like actually linking them. I haven't heard that linkage even in like a tertiary way so far.
Okay. Well, I know I skipped ahead because he's a later.
No, it's beautiful. You can throw anybody at me. Hopefully I can get it there.
We want to take as many of your questions as possible, so please keep them coming. I love this question from Keeping the Faith. Question for Dieter. Is there anything you're hearing about 11 that you can't tell us?
Let me see how well. Let me see. That I can't tell you.
Yes, tell us what you can't tell us.
No, I can't. I'll say this at 11. It's going to be a defensive lineman. The idea that they're going to take an offensive lineman just doesn't hold water. I can understand why people are going there. I think it's a very logical place to go. Frankly, it's a logical place to go anywhere with this 49ers roster at 11. You want to take a quarterback? Why the hell not? You don't have your current one under contract for next, 2026. So, you could go anywhere, but when it comes to offensive line, we'll come to this again and again. Chris Forster is the guy that they're betting on. He doesn't play offensive line, but he coaches it. And I think that for all the arguments of, well, you lost Jalen Moore, you need a new swing tackle, they think that Chris Forster made Jalen Moore. And Jalen Moore's worth $15 million a year now. So he'll just do that again. And they banked on it last year when it came to Pooney. I think they're banking on it a bit with Burford this year at left guard. But Ben Barch was really good in his game and a half, which were legitimately a revelation. They just think that he can give them competent enough offensive line play. And when you're going to be paying your quarterback $50+ million, when you got all this dead money and blah, 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 like, you got to sacrifice somewhere. They're going to sacrifice in the places that they think their coaching is best. And as of right now, they think their coaching is best on the offensive line.
I don't necessarily disagree with that philosophy, right? Like, if you've got a strength, that's fine. Like, for example, the 49ers can find running backs, even undrafted free agents, that can really play well for them. For some reason, they also draft them in the third round, which doesn't make sense. But,
hey, eventually you're bound to hit on one or two, right?
I mean, playing to those strengths is fine. I agree with that philosophy. Yeah. I would say I'm not really sure I value I don't know that Chris Forster and, more importantly, Chris Kasarik have the magical powers that the 49ers sometimes think that they have.
I totally agree with that. I think, and I think that that's somewhat evident in the fact that they're going defensive line, if not specifically defensive tackle with pick number 11. Like, clearly they're like, we got to give Kasarik something. It should also be noted that a lot of people, if you wanted to put a dent in the argument on they're betting on Forster thing, it's because Forster said, unless there's a Trent Williams type, in which case, of course, you take him because we're not idiots here, which is factual. There is no Trent Williams type in this draft. And this is something that we fall into every year. I think that it's just a recency bias thing. I don't think this is a particularly good draft. I like a lot of the players, particularly on the defensive line and particularly at defensive tackle, which really works out for the 49ers. And I like some of the depth, but it's a mean versus median argument. People go, oh, well, there's 200 draftable players. Well, if I have 100 dudes that I could take in the 5th and the 6th round, does that make my football team any better? My special teams will be well-rounded, but the rest of my team is going to suck because I have nothing but 5th and 6th rounders. I'd prefer a top-heavy draft where I have 2 rounds full of guys who have first-round grades, because at least I know I'll get something out of it, as opposed to buying a bunch of lottery tickets, which I feel like, hey, that's fine. And by the way, the Niners have a ton of day 3 picks, which they probably do need to consolidate in some way. So not a bad position to be in, to where you're inside the top 20, unquestionably. And I think there's actually more like 15 first-round guys. Lynch said there was 20. Agree to disagree. So they're in that position regardless of if you're pessimistic or optimistic of how many first rounders there are. You need to draft at the position that's strongest, both at the top and depth wise in this draft. And when you're really going to, have to nail some picks, it might actually align with the actual strength of this draft, which is, hey, there's a lot of guys who can, because of COVID and a bunch of 24-year-olds getting drafted, there might be some guys who can come in, give you their floor right away, but there is no ceiling. And those guys are 4th, 5th, 6th round picks that, hey, you can plug in. They can be a Burford. They can be a Pooney type. I know Pooney was round 3, but like they can be someone who comes in. You don't have to extrapolate them out. They're not going to be future all-pros or anything, but they're competent enough NFL players that they can give you snaps on day 1, despite being a day 3 pick in the draft. So this draft really might all be working out for the 49ers, and it better, because if they don't nail this thing, they are in deep, deep trouble.
Yes, they will be bad for quite some time. Ken Muller asks or says, Michael Williams should be the pick at number 11. I'm completely blaming this on you and Hutch, but you have totally sold me on Michael Williams. You are the only 2 people I have seen that have him as the number 1 edge in the entire draft, ahead of Abdul Carter, ahead of everybody.
Yes.
Why?
I have him as my number 1 overall player.
Wow. And he could drop to the Niners at 11, possibly?
Correct.
What is it? Why do you have him rated so much higher than everybody else?
I don't know. I have been asking this question. Like, I'm legitimately having like a bit of a panic attack about it. We really do try to remove ourselves fully from the groupthink of all of it. And one of the beauties of we've tried to do this project in the past because we were sick of taking other people's words for it. And this is just being narcissists. Like, we're like, oh, we're better at this. And by the way, like, we've had some people, who'll tell us that we might be better at this. But like, that's neither here nor there. In that we haven't had the time. The Niners have been good. That's pushed our regular season and postseason workload out to February. Mm-hmm. And so we have been in many ways catching up with the draft, even as we sort of piece it together, as we really enjoy the process. Like, we've been catching up. This year we had nothing but time, baby. We started working on the draft at Thanksgiving. That Buffalo game happened, and I started grinding Georgia tape. So we have had nothing but time to think about it. And I do, a little bit of how the sausage is made. Like, a lot of years we are catching up and we are getting numbers at the same athletic testing numbers at the same time as we're getting the tape, or we're really starting to get into the tape. That is anchoring in a lot of ways. We are often led by, here's a guy with great athletic testing numbers, and now it's almost a confirmation bias in some ways when you're looking for the tape. Like, oh, he is as good as his numbers say. We did it in reverse this year because we had a lot more time. And we were really away from the groupthink because we put together a list of 200 people before the regular season was over. And so in that, it was just about the tape. It was just about how well you play. And it was really interesting seeing the guys that we thought would test well, and some of the guys we thought would test well, not test well, and all these things. But it was interesting coming at it from that perspective. But on the tape, it is jarring how good Michael Williams is. My favorite game that I've played, and I have had to do it now again frequently over the last 2 weeks, as I feel very much on an island, as he's my number 1 player. I will pull up I got a big list of all 22, hop into the database. Georgia, pick a good opponent. I will pull up the all-22 film. It's a cut-up of all the plays that he's in on. It's about 15 minutes long. I will pick a random time in the game, and I will just watch that rep. I've watched all these before. I'll just watch that rep. And he wins every time. He just wins every time. Everything he does just looks ready. I'll give you an example. Today I did it. I was, just like, am I crazy? I can't be this crazy. Like, I know what I know. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But like, I see what I'm seeing. This guy's incredible. And I see that the ankle's injured, and I don't really like the way that Georgia rotates him, and they played him inside maybe a little bit too often. But all he did was win. The 3 reps I did today, let me pull this up, make sure I have it right. I just texted Hutch about it. It was, they lined him up at defensive tackle. He gets double teamed. He holds his gap. I mean, that alone is impressive enough. He's a defensive end. Second rep, it is a read option. He's playing Texas, by the way. They had a hell of an offensive line. They're going to get drafted almost across the board. Arguably the best offensive line in college football last year. They do a read option. They leave him as the unblocked guy. He squares it up perfectly. He forces Quinn Ewers to make a decision with the football that was disadvantageous. The chip block coming from the other side is tossed away like a toddler, and then he gets the running back for a 3-yard loss. Literally a random play. I just went like 752. What's this play? Here we go. Unbelievable zone read. And then the next play is him just taking Kelvin Banks to the dry cleaners. Just absolutely wrecking this dude with a 6 swim move off the edge. Those were 3 random plays. I wish I was making this up. And I did this every day where I would just pick 3 random plays or whatever, just random plays from a good game from Mykel Williams. And he just kept winning. I don't understand how people aren't seeing it. I'd take him 1 overall over Travis Hunter.
Wow. Okay. That is crazy to me. Now I'm going to just push back a little here. I'm going to say, okay, he's great. He does all those things. He's big, strong, fast. Why can he only get 4.5, 5 sacks a year? Because for me, I'm terrified that the Niners are going to draft Shamar Stewart, which is, to me, he has so little production in college that terrifies me. Mykel Williams has more than Shamar Stewart, but not much more. And if he's so good, why didn't he produce more?
Fewer snaps, more responsibility. He was a lot of times asked to take, first off, one of my favorite axioms, and I don't remember who told me this. Maybe I just made this shit up. Pardon me for this cursing, but like in this, you don't need me to tell you who the good players on the field are. The opposing coaches will tell you who the good players on the field are. Every offensive coordinator was terrified of Mykel Williams. Double teams, triple teams. I can't believe they left him unblocked that one time. I thought that was, I watched that I'm like, did they know the 13 was on the field? And Georgia, I think overextended him. I think they overused him. Not in the sense that they gave him more reps than everybody else, because they frankly over-rotate, but they played him inside a lot because they knew that he could just get the job done. They knew that he could be a role player on the inside. He was not put in the same situation as an Abdul Carter, where he had no responsibilities whatsoever. Abdul Carter's out here freelancing, baby. You can do whatever you want. Go make some flash plays, buddy. That was their system. It worked out well for them. They were in the playoff. I'm not denigrating the Penn State coaching staff, but it was a lot different than what they do at Georgia, where they're like, oh, we need to stop the run here because it's a 3rd and short, and we know they're running it up the middle. Guess who's at defensive tackle now? Mykel Williams. Hey, we need a good pass rush situation. Guess who's at defensive end now? Here's Mykel Williams. And not only did Georgia consistently put him in a position, not necessarily to win, but to hold the defense together. But also, the flip side is wherever he was, that was the focal point of the offensive line coach and the offensive coordinator. And so when you watch, oh, well, why didn't he get a lot of sacks? Because they were throwing that ball away so fast anytime he was on the edge that he never had a chance. I think a lot of the arguments about Mykel Williams' lack of production, there's some fairness there. But ultimately, you have to hold the same energy when we talk about a guy like Nick Bosa. Why is it that Nick Bosa isn't getting 20 sacks a year or 15 sacks a year? Well, he's got a lot of other things he's got to do because he's the only one who can set an edge on the entire 49ers defensive line. He's got bums in the middle. And then on the opposite side, he's got Robert Beal, who is a nice cautionary tale for Georgia over-rotating guys. Mykel Stewart was everything for that Georgia defense. That Georgia defense was not as good as it was in years past, but I just think Kirby Smart and the defensive line coach there put him in situations not necessarily to be productive from a statistical standpoint, but to be productive from an overall defensive standpoint, whereas I just don't see the same thing with Shamar Stewart. I did not see coaches adding more responsibility, adding more onus to Shamar Stewart's game. They kind of had him freelancing a little bit, like he was Abdul Carter, and in that he got 1.5 sacks a year for 3 straight years.
That's the crazy thing. Like, this guy had 3 years for the light bulb to go on, and it didn't go on. And now you're saying when he's not as big and as fast and as strong comparatively to his competition, he's going to get better? Like, that doesn't make any sense.
No, yeah, I love the extrapolation. And John Lynch had a great quote about it yesterday. I'm going to paraphrase, but like ultimately, he's like, at some point, production matters. Like it's one thing if we're talking about a kid who's, 1 year. This isn't the NBA draft. Oh, he did a year at Duke. Oh, he did a year in the G League. We got to extrapolate this out for 5, 6, 7 years. This is the NFL draft. These guys have been in college in some cases for like 9 years now. It's unbelievable how long some of these guys have been in college. By the way, Michael Williams, 21 years old.
Oof.
So, you don't like where he's at now? Like he played on a bum ankle the entire year. They kept him on the field. He played through an ankle injury that would have kept other dudes off in a lot of circumstances. That was a really tough Georgia team. I'll give them that. Because I think ETN, the running back, played through a bunch of injuries that a lot of guys wouldn't have played through as well. So I really do like that Georgia, their toughness and their overall operation, even if I can get a little nitpicky on some of the tactical details. But regardless, he's playing through it. Again, playing him at defensive tackle, sub 300 pounds for sure, sub 270 really. Doing all of these things, bum ankle, never really got a chance to get better at it. As the season progressed, they played him more and more and more snaps. So that rotation that they had, which is more of an ideological thing than a specifically Michael Williams thing, that went out the window. He is going to be much better in the pros, but I have enough of a baseline at the college level where I can say, oh, he was productive at college. He's winning all of his reps. Shamar Stewart, you're saying exactly what you were saying. Like, how does this get better at the pro level? He got 1.5 sacks. He's playing 4 cupcake games a year. He's the 3rd best defensive lineman on his own team. He's the 4th best if you include Walter Nolan, who transferred out. And by the way, they have 4, the same coaching staff had 4 draftable defensive linemen. He's had 2 different coaching staffs, by the way. So Mike Elko's staff couldn't get it figured out either. But in the sense of you have all these other guys from the same program getting drafted. And I love Nick Scourton. I know who came from Purdue and only had a year, but like I think he's a really good player. I forget the name of the defensive tackle off the top of my head, but I think he's solid enough. He was in my top 150. And then obviously Nolan, who I consider the 2nd best defensive tackle in this class. How come those guys are doing so well for Texas A&M, but this guy can't seem to get it together? But he's such an athletic freak. There's been a lot of athletic freaks that we don't hear about once they come to the NFL level. And then there's guys like Juwan Jennings, who frankly shouldn't be allowed on an NFL field with their testing numbers and yet just keep getting it done. Sometimes you got to be a football player. Lynch said as much yesterday. If you want to read into that as, hey, they're going to go with Shamar Stewart, feel free. They might. I think that'd be a mistake, though. I'm with you.
By the way, I know it's dangerous to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Do it.
Alden Smith, 6'5", 255. Michael Williams, 6'5", 267.
I went to college with Alden. I covered Alden when we were both in college. Alden Smith, I don't need to tell any 49ers fans this, but I don't think people quite understand what sort of a physical freak he was. Also, played on a broken leg his final year at Missouri. And there were some questions about, his production really slipped his final year. He was playing on a broken leg. He played a lot of defensive tackle that year for Mizzou. This would have been, 10? Yeah. And, of course, comes in, more specific role, more specific coaching. What does he do? I mean, it's not one-to-one because there are some – Alden has a lot more wiggle, and Alden had a lot more burst. But it's not far off, and there are a lot of kind of eerie parallels. I do not know, though, if Michael Williams can do a standing front flip with a broken leg, which is something Alden Smith did while standing on a sheet of ice for me one time, and is still the most incredible athletic feat I've ever seen. I still don't quite know if it happened in real life. Like he promised that he would do it for me at the beginning of. I talked to him twice a week, every week for an entire season. He was the sweetest kid back then. He promised that he would do it in August. The PR staff's like, no way you're doing that. Like, we're not letting you do that. We get to December. Again, he broke his fibula. And he's walking around in a boot. He did it in a boot.
What?
It's the most insane thing I've ever seen. And he just tucked. It was like Sonic the Hedgehog. And he's like, no. I promised. And we go outside. It's Missouri in December.
Oh my God.
And he's in a boot and he just does it. And I'm like, anyone else? It's honestly one of the biggest regrets of my life that I don't have it on video, because I would have had millions from YouTube by now.
Yes.
Because you would have seen that. I mean, I would have made an entire career off of that. But that's Alden Smith. So I shudder to go that high. But he's pretty good. He's pretty good, this Michael Williams. I want him.
Remember watching Alden and being like, he just looks bigger and different than all the guys out there.
Twitchy as hell, man. He's unbelievable. I mean, I know that people like to say that basketball players, and I cover the NBA, like they're unbelievable athletes. You're not doing any better than a defensive end or the greatest athletes of all, the Vince Wilforks of the world, like a true one technique with all the twitch covered up by 100 extra pounds of fat. That's the best athlete on the planet. I mean, I watch sumo wrestling with my 2-year-old. That's who I want. I want Vince Wilfork. I don't think there's anybody like that in this draft, sadly, though.
By the way, and I apologize, I've kept you way longer than I
No,
thought.
I'm having a great time.
Okay, good. Thank you. One of my favorite interview moments of all time is Trent Williams and Joe Staley.
Yes.
And they're talking about the hardest pass rusher they ever faced. And they go, all right, let's say it at the same time. 1, 2, 3. And they both go, Alden Smith immediately.
It is truly one of the. It's a really sad thing. He could have been the absolute best. He absolutely could have been the absolute best to ever do it, on par with Reggie White and name anybody. He had that ability. He showed that ability. Sometimes the only thing he couldn't beat was his own demons, man. He was special, and wherever he is right now, I hope he's doing well, because he's got a good soul in him. I can tell you that.
Did not mean to take this down Alden Smith memory lane, but
that's on me. That's on me, baby. You don't start me on Alden Smith and don't expect diatribical nonsense.
Let's get into beyond pick 11, because a lot of the focus is what are they going to do at 11? They have 10 other draft picks. They need to do much more. Even if they crush pick number 11,
right,
they need to do way more than that. My sort of sneaky hope is that if they go D-line in round 1, can they get like the best interior offensive lineman in the draft at 43? Is there a way that could happen, and how good is that guy?
It's a reasonable concept. They could go with Donovan from Ohio State there. I think that that's a possibility, because he's going to be fringy first. This is a tough draft in the sense that it falls off a cliff. And it falls off a cliff right around 43. I mean, like give or take 5. So the Niners might be sitting absolutely pretty. And it really, another great nonsensical axiom that I do think applies is quarterbacks define your draft. So if we're in a situation where teams are holding true to their boards, and I've seen this a little bit more frequently in recent years, to where we've kind of lost the middle class of quarterback. But if teams hold to their boards and they go, hey, that guy's not good enough, it might get a little dicey for the 49ers at 43. If teams feel the need to move up, maybe get into that first round, get that 5th-year option for a Jackson Dart or a Tyler Shug or something, if it feels like the quarterbacks are going to go early, that's 2 or 3 or 4 guys who are maybe jumping over that number 43 line on big boards. And that just pushes good players down the 49ers way. That could help out with the Tyler Booker, though I do think he goes early. The guard from Alabama, who I'm not the biggest fan of, but is certainly a very good football player. I'm just trying to, Jared Wilson. They got a couple of Georgia kids. I do think there's nice depth. Tate Ratledge would be an interesting option, though I think he might be a bit of a stretch at 43. I'm also, the Niners have done a great job. Specifically last year, they did a great job on not caring like what the big board said. Like they have their guys and their numbers. So Renardo Green was considered a stretch by, he's actually a 3rd round pick and you took him in the 2nd. Who cares?
Right.
Do you like him? Is it going to work? I don't need to date everybody. I just need to find my life partner. Like, you only need one person to like you, and that player only needs to work for you. So the idea of a stretcher, really reaching for him here, who cares? If it's close enough and you're at 43 or earlier or later and you want to take him, take him. It's just a question on, is that player somebody who I don't care about the value of it as much as the extrapolation of their talent. I mean, there are going to be some guys at 43. Now we start getting into a wider cone of air. And there are some guys who it could get really dicey. That's what the second round's for. Oh, they have first round talent, but they got, day 3 temperament, or they got unbelievable football acumen and what high IQ, but they're kind of not as athletic as I'd like them to be. There's something up there. This is the red flag zone. So I do think they could go interior. I don't think Gray Zabel, who might be the ideal guy there, the interior. Well, actually, I don't even know. He could play all 5 positions from North Dakota State. That would probably be ideal. I don't think he's going to be there. I think he is a top 20 pick, if I'm being frank. And that's not my board. That's just what I've heard. Like, people really, really like him, and the versatility is an asset for him. So I don't know if interior offensive line is going to be the obvious move there. I do think that a position where it falls to them in a really good way is cornerback. And I think that between like Maxwell Hairston or Ravel from ECU, or the Notre Dame kid, Trey Amos, who my man Hutch is all over Trey Amos from Ole Miss. I think Jacob Parrish would be a bit of a stretch at 43, but I love Jacob Parrish. I think that that's a position where they could really clean up, because it's not going to be prioritized in this draft. Even, Will Howard falling probably into the 20s, all things considered. It's just not going to be prioritized. And I think that the Niners might have, much like with defensive tackle or defensive line in the first round at 11, they might have a pick of 2 or 3 really good options there at that position. And that is a position of need. As much as you love Renardo Green, and as much as you love Diamador Lenore, you got to have 3, and currently they have 2. So they should probably look that direction as well. And it falls off pretty significantly after day 2. So earlier the better there.
I could almost say the same thing about linebacker, although do they even have 2? I mean, they have Fred, who we love, and everybody loves hearing Fred say, I make a lot of money, I make enough money, especially Jed. I do think they need a linebacker. I think linebacker's a bigger need than corner, to be honest with you.
It's inarguably a bigger need than corner, but it's also a much worse position to be drafting at this year. I personally very much dislike this linebacker class. I will also say that I kind of dislike every linebacker class. So I think I've been justified by that in the last couple of years. The last linebacker I seem to remember liking was Fred Warner, and he was a safety. So I'm a little bit picky when it comes to linebacker. I'm a big Smile Mondon guy out of Georgia. I think that you have to go back to the 23 tape, but he was exceptional, and I think that he fits the bill for off-ball linebacker, which is, again, it puts you in a positive position if you're the 49ers that you don't need a mic, and that you're not looking to get a mic anytime soon, because that's a completely different skill. You're just looking for someone to see and to kill, seek and destroy, right? You're just looking for the Dre Greenlaw temperament, not necessarily the full Fred Warner package. That gives you a lot more options and probably allows you to wait a little bit longer, because all you need is someone who's better than D. Winters. And D. Winters is a lovely fellow, but he's not very good at tackling, and that seems to be kind of important for linebackers. He's Ralph Wigguming into the window every time he makes a tackle. The guy to look for here, I don't know if 43 is the number, but I would have no problem with it. The one linebacker that I put my full stamp of approval on when we're talking about outside of Jalen Walker, who I love and I think should play outside linebacker, a true outside linebacker in a 4-3. But Demetrius Knight, the linebacker from South Carolina, he's got the kill. And when you listen to Dieter and Hutch, we'll talk often about, does he have the crazy? Does he have that temper?
Yes.
You have to have it. You have to have a screw loose in order to play this game at the highest level. Because I don't know, Rob, if you've ever been on the field during an NFL game. It is like viscerally frightening to be. They are going so fast and they are hitting so hard. And it's really impossible to explain with words. It is scary. It is like you're in a car crash 100 times a game. And I just got in my first car crash. Let me tell you, pretty equivalent to the feeling of like being just close to it. And I've done it, obviously, high school, college, and the NFL. The jump from college to the NFL in terms of speed and fear instilled in your chest, just being proximate to it, is inexplicable. It is wild. So if you have somebody who looks like they're playing with a little bit of trepidation, maybe a little bit of let's see where this goes. They're skating a little bit, they're floating a little bit. You can't play. You can't play for me on defense. You can't play for Robert Saleh. That's for damn sure. It's all gas, no brakes, baby. This guy has no brakes. He has all gas. He is a killer. And he will never be Dre Greenlaw because Dre Greenlaw is a truly outstanding player who wants to play Mike linebacker, which is why he's in Denver right now, and probably can do it. But, man, Demetrius Knight, seek and destroy. He's a missile. And in this system where you have the wide splits up front, you're effectively playing two middle linebackers in the sense of just fill the gap, fill the gap, fill the gap. This guy's going to fill your gap. And we can all take a moment to acknowledge the hilarity of that line. Regardless, Demetrius Knight would be the guy at 43 if you're looking for a linebacker. And I absolutely think he'd be there. I think you could trade down a little bit and probably get him. But somebody else, it's going to be the Rams, somebody else is going to like him a lot. And they're going to be right in that ball game. So I would advise the Niners to do what they did last year. And if you feel you like the guy, don't worry about what the number is next to his name. Get the guy.
Right, because if it works out, no one's going to say, yeah, but they could have drafted him a round later. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
If Ricky Pearsall ends up being a good player, no one's going to care that they took him in round 1 instead of round 2.
It makes his life a little trickier, to be fair. It makes everybody's life a little bit more complicated when you have pick prestige attached to you. But that is a side issue. If you kick ass, it doesn't matter if you were taken 1 overall or, in the case of a Brock Purdy, last. You're going to get paid. You're gonna be a star. Like, this is the NFL. There is no weird hierarchy. We're not dealing with colleges. Oh, we paid this guy this much money, and this guy, oh, this coach really likes it. There's nothing ticky-tack about the NFL. If you play, you can get paid. They will find you, guaranteed, because there are too many bodies being sprawn around on the field for you not to get a shot at some point if you're in the league. And I think Demetrius Knight is a guy who would immediately, I would put on the depth chart above D. Winters. They won't do it that way, but I can see that very, very easily in a not impressive linebacker class.
They might do it. I mean, Shanahan and Lynch have both gone out of their way to say, hey, Dave Winters is not the unquestioned starter here. They both have said that. I was like, damn. Oh, okay.
Something to have considered during free agency, don't you think?
Yeah, well, that's the whole
Hey,
other...
we you know how we lost our outside linebacker? Well, stuff happens. Oh, anyway, let's just go to the draft. It's like, how about we get some money and go get somebody else? I just thought.
We'll fill all of our needs. We'll figure everything out. We'll nail all our picks. That's what I would do. If I was a GM, I'll just draft good players with every pick.
And I would run the touchdown play every time. I don't know why they don't take our advice.
God, it seems so easy. Bruce asks, what are your thoughts on Jack Sawyer? He screams 49ers defensive end to me, high motor and great run defender.
I would love Jack Sawyer as an undrafted free agent. He will not be an undrafted free agent. There's no bend. There's no wiggle. He's Shamar Stewart without any of the athleticism. He's just motor. Motor is a wonderful thing. He's got the crazy. There's no question about it. But what was the name of the Scooby Wright? Remember Scooby Wright from Arizona? Unbelievable college linebacker. I think he won a bunch of awards. He was great. He got drafted in the 6th round. He didn't even make it into the regular season. There is a difference between the college and the NFL game. And this is why the athletic testing scores really do matter. It's why I don't poo-poo them. It's why I probably overvalue them in some cases. Jack Sawyer is a great college football player. He was exceptional for Ohio State, whose defensive line I just kind of don't like in general, but that's a personal issue. I think that he will be a tough cut for any team that gets him. But any team that takes him in the 3rd or the 4th round, I just think that they're falling into a trap because he doesn't have the athletic traits to win on the edge consistently. And defensive end is a position that is just ruthless to anyone who doesn't have tight end and defensive end. If you don't have the requisite athleticism, it doesn't matter how good it is between the ears. It doesn't matter how hard you try. Those are positions that require a certain amount of athleticism, and it is a ever increasing bar. And I personally don't think that Jack Sawyer has it. So if the Niners want to take him, late in the 3rd, undrafted free agent, that's where you take guys like that. That's where you take the Juwan Jennings of the world, where it's like, this guy's a great football player, but he doesn't have any athleticism. It's a flyer. If we lose, no risk at all. Mm-hmm. But if you're taking this guy in the third or the fourth round in a draft where you have to nail all of your top 100 picks, like, yes, I can see how he might inspire some confidence because he's going to try real hard every play. I try really hard too. It doesn't mean that I can play in the NFL. It doesn't matter how hard you want it if you don't have the twitch.
There is a tall enough to ride the bumper cars requirement when it comes to physical ability.
He just doesn't do it. I would rather at that position. If we're talking like third round, and I've seen him mock there, and I don't put too much stock in mock drafts because, again, the group think and we're all just guessing here. I can't get a read on all 7 rounds for all 32 teams, right? Like, I think I got a decent read on the league, but I'm not even the biggest. I don't think Schefter could put that together and keep his head on straight. So the idea that I've seen third, fourth round, I would say that most teams will value him as like a 5th or 6th round. There will be 1 or 2 teams, particularly the Lions, I would imagine, because that's their identity. They'll like him more than others.
Great.
And that's all you need to get drafted. If we're talking third round, I would rather have, and I do think he'll be there because of the off-field concerns, I'd rather have James Pierce, who is all twitch, probably needs to put on 10, 15 pounds, and you're not sure if he's going to even play for you a snap because of the off-field stuff. But I would rather take a chance on a guy like that because you can be a lot more wrong about personality and some of the off-field stuff. That sometimes that stuff was all just nonsense, and he's a model citizen. Sometimes it's not. But then you have all the twitch, and now you have this great piece of clay that you can work with that you get a little bit of wiggle room because he's a 3rd-round guy, a 4th-round guy. Jack Sawyer, he comes in. What happens after trying really hard doesn't work? What's this next level that he goes to? At what point is it like, hey, you don't have any pass rush moves, and just dipping your shoulder and going really hard isn't going to work against Trent Williams?
Yeah, right.
Like at what point do you go, oh damn, we could have used somebody else at that pick? Like, if it's 6th round, you just cut them. You never think about it again. They won't even put out a press release if that happens. Like, I'm not the biggest fan. I hope I'm wrong because I do think that guys who have big, high motors and try really hard, like I hope that there's a place for them in the NFL. I just don't think there is.
2 more things I want to talk to you about, and then I'll let you go because I've kept you for so long, and I'm grateful for your
blast. You don't need to apologize.
I know that Kyle Shanahan is going to take a wide receiver.
Yes, he is.
He's going to do it. He's done it almost every single draft.
Yep.
Let's assume that they take a wide receiver late in day 2 or on day 3.
Okay.
If you could pick that guy, if that got to be your pick, as the 49ers seemingly like to hand them out, who would you pick? Who can I hope for?
It's so tricky. Wide receivers in every draft class are very difficult to get a read on because that, much like running back, is so scheme dependent and coach desires and things like that. I think the best case scenario would be a Jalen Royals out of Utah State. He's just kind of a classic number 2 receiver. I think he's got a little bit more than maybe meets the eye on his game film. I like a Torrey Horton out of Colorado State. Apparently I'm a big Mountain West guy this year. I don't know if he's a day 2 guy, but there will certainly be people who look at particularly his 23 film, which you want to talk about being sick in the head. I'm watching 2023 Colorado State film. Like, somebody take me out of my misery. But there's something there when you watch him and you go, oh, there might be levels to this that haven't been untapped. I like a lot of the 5th, 6th, 7th round wide receivers, frankly. I think that there's an incredible depth of talent. Is the name you want me to say Kyle Williams? Because I'll say it.
Well, to be honest, the name I want you to say is Jacob Cowing. I loved Jacob Cowing last year. They barely used him.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like he has much of a, I don't know, maybe he'll do more this year, but
maybe
clearly they need one.
I'm hoping for him because there's something useful there. I found it an interesting draft pick last year. I couldn't say that it was a bad one because it was such a surprising pick. I go, oh, they're kind of working on something different. I might have had a bad read on the Niners as opposed to a bad read on Cowing because there's not a lot to interpret with Cowing's game. He runs a very clean out route. That's it. That's what he does. He runs out routes. That's a good thing to be able to do. It's an effective tool. I was also under the impression going into last season, and maybe this all just got shot to hell on the basis of they didn't really do training camp, but I was under the impression that they were going to be a more spread out team for Brock this past season. And maybe the Ayuk situation just made that impossible. Certainly they were just, they never had enough bodies out there in training camp to ever do anything effective. So they probably just went back to basics, but which, that's why they won 6. But I thought it would be a little bit more spread out. And I thought that in that case, then, hey, here's like this classic Big 12 receiver who is just going to out. Like, oh, you're going to give me off coverage and quarters coverage, 7 yards and out every time. This is going to be like a running play for us.
Yeah.
I thought that was going to be more of the mold. I thought that was going to be what they were going to. Ultimately, Cowing doesn't have really more than that. He can't really run a 9 route for you, so he can't do clear out stuff because he's not actually fast enough. He slows down significantly after about 5 yards. He's really good at 5 yards and out. He's great out of that specific break. But slants were really tricky. Digs were tricky. Like, it was 4th round. I just thought that the Niners offense had to look different for him to make more sense. And it doesn't look like it's going to be different. So maybe it is this upcoming season. I'm done guessing on that front. I just, the fact that there were ample opportunities for him last year to get on the field and they're like, no, we're going with Chris Conley, is not encouraging for his future hopes. And it was, again, a very surprising pick. I had him as like a 6th round guy, 7th round guy. Like, hey, you take a chance, right system. Maybe he's, 4th or 5th receiver. I think it was the wrong system and he was still the 4th or the 5th receiver. And they took him in the 4th. So, yeah, they absolutely need at least 1 wide receiver in this class. I would argue 2, because I know there's some optimism about Brandon Ayuk coming back. Like, that's cool, man, until it isn't.
Right.
Like, I'm glad that we're all feeling great about it. I would rather be surprised than disappointed. So, and with his knees pulled pork. Like, I feel really. It's all gone. They couldn't even explain the extent of the injury. They literally said, and other ligaments. It's like, dude, there's like 4, like, so all of them, like other ligaments,
all the CLs, ACL, MCL, whatever.
These are cruciate ligaments. You should be able to explain which ones have been torn. Oh, and his meniscus is super messed up. And it's like, dude, I mean, I saw him at the Warriors game the other day and it's like, coming off of Debo last year where it was like, oh boy, like Debo's clothes don't fit anymore. Which he's on I always call that the Kurtenbach plan. So at least I can acknowledge that, same boat, buddy. We both have a lot of yak that we get through. You'd see Debo last year and it's like, ooh, he needs to go to the other set of clothes. I saw Ayuk and it kind of looked that way, but then it's like, of course he looks that way. His knee doesn't work. How are you supposed to do any cardio at all? Like, he'd have to be on the deepest keto diet ever to maintain his playing weight if that was the case. So I'm extrapolating it out and I'm really hoping for him. I know that there's a lot of bad will specifically with the fan base from last year. I found it all to be very strange and bizarre because it was so different than the Brandon Ayuk that I had gotten to know a little bit, all of that diva stuff. And I just think that, he's an impressionable guy. I think some bad people got in his ear, or maybe, they said, hey, this is how you got to do this. And I'm not sure that was the case. The fact that he just showed up to work every day was like, that's kind of the Brandon Ayuk I know. Like, it was weird. It was all weird and it all felt very off character. And I'm certainly no one, I think he was just about coming around when the knee totally exploded. He had a really good first half against Kansas City, if I recall correctly. So I'm hoping for him. The Niners are certainly hoping for it because they just paid him a lot of money. But I think banking on him for week 1. And then one of the guys that they actually did sign, he's suspended. So he was supposed to be the replacement, Robinson. He's just not playing for the first 3 weeks, which are the 3 weeks you need him most. So I would draft a wide receiver or 2. Just a thought.
Weirdest. Yeah. None of it makes any sense. They also,
it's all 26, baby. Just think about 26.
They cut a fullback only to bring him back and guarantee an extra year on his contract that they didn't need to guarantee. Like, super smart things that all well-run organizations do. The last thing I need to get to, because you can't talk about the 49ers without talking about Brock Purdy.
Yes.
Mike Silver said progress was made. And then the report now is they're inching towards a deal. That's the new word with Brock Purdy, is inching.
We're all inching towards a deal, aren't we?
We're inching towards death.
That's exactly right. That's our only deal that we get. It's the one certain deal.
Why it's so hilarious to me that the organization would talk to Mike Silver and leak out how dissatisfied they were with all the deals and essentially blame Kyle Shanahan and his emotional decision making for all these deals. Yet they do the same negotiation pattern with every single big star, which is wait, delay, try to win the deal, ultimately cave and pay way more than they needed to. Why do they operate like this?
Because the person who is actually in charge isn't Yes, exactly. Let's just call it what it is. Parag shows up to negotiate deals, and Parag supersedes John and Kyle. In most situations, the general manager or the director, whatever, there's a head honcho. Yes. That person is in charge, and he has underlings who handle the nitty gritty, right? But they come to him or her, in the case of the Bengals, her, for rubber stamping or green ink or whatever. Like, it is their call. That is not the case with the 49ers. The Parag makes all of the contract decisions. It is his call. And it's interesting that we talk about, Kyle's decision-making and this and that. That's on Jed.
Yes.
It's on Jed because they were just off on a sojourn. They were just hanging out in Leeds. You know what Parag's been doing? He's been running a soccer team full-time. And every now and again, he comes back to the United States and, hey, I still actually am in charge here too. But they sort of left the house to the kids. And John and Kyle got to run it as they see fit. And they were figuring out their dynamic. And then every now and again, it's like, here's the parents. And you get throwing stuff in a closet, you're cleaning up. It is somewhat hilarious. It's not dysfunctional in practice, but it's dysfunctional from an organizational depth chart standpoint. Like, Parag is very good at what he does. And I think John Lynch is very good at the reasons that he was hired, which is sort of, soft influence and power and being the face of the franchise and bringing people together. He's a politician. He's really good at it. And he's like the nicest dude. And I think he has a really sharp football mind as well. And Kyle is really good at knowing what his team needs to best execute, because Kyle's a micromanager, and everything that they're going to execute, Kyle has done in effect. He's already planned it out. He's 7 steps ahead. All of these things could work if they were all working together full time, but they're not. And so the Kyle and John relationship of Kyle is technically in charge of John because he hired him. Mm-hmm. And that only has to show up anytime that Kyle wants it to show up. And then Parag shows up anytime Jed wants Parag to show up, and he handles it. And it's why you get this discordance with Christian McCaffrey just gets a deal. He just gets one because it never really reached the level where we needed to bring Parag in. But Trent Williams and Brandon Ayuk, well, it's not going as fast as we thought. We couldn't just get it done with John and Kyle. So now it's a thing, and they call in the wolf. Hey, Parag, come and do this. And now he's like,
the wolf.
Well, it is what it is.
The wolf.
I think Diamador Lenore's contract is actually a pretty good indication that he's got some wolf.
Well, there are a couple. The Dre Greenlaw deal, when it was done, unbelievable. And the Lenore contract is ridiculously good for the 49ers.
Think about the contracts that they have won on. They have not won on any contract that has been preseason, right? But they win on contracts that just randomly happen on a Tuesday in December. They got those things down because that is the agent coming to the team and being like, hey, we'd like to get something done. And then the 49ers having all the power because they don't have to do squat. And then they just offer something, frankly, kind of ridiculous, which gives that agent, who's not very good at their job, a number that looks good, but then the devil's in the details. The Parag is in the details. And you look at it and you go, actually, is Diamador Lenore paying you? Like, how does this work? And so it was tricky. When you get into this drag it out, we got nothing to do but think about it time, that's when all these conflicting energies come. And the longer you push this, the more you get Kyle worried about it affecting the actual play on the field, which is why you have him running through the facility to get the deal done with Ayuk, which is why you have him before, OTAs last year being like, whatever you want, Christian. Like, we just can't have it. Like, all of this incongruity comes down to, is Parag in the room at the start or not? Is Parag getting called in from ownership? Because as soon as Parag comes in, that's a new negotiation. That's an entirely different thing because he's just not there every day. And I don't blame the guy. They gave him another job. But if he's the one who's actually in charge, maybe leave him in charge of the San Francisco 49ers and hire somebody else to do your soccer jobs. Like, if you trust him, let him do the thing that you need him to do with the most important asset in your portfolio, with the biggest money aspects of your portfolio, and leave the other stuff, the side projects, to side people. But stretching him, I feel bad for him in a little bit, stretching him in both ways to where he has to negotiate a Brock Purdy contract, the biggest contract in the history of the 49ers, and a contract that is vital for the direction of the entire league moving forward, because where Brock Purdy falls in then creates just a domino effect of X, Y, and Z, like every quarterback contract will be, regardless of if it's top, middle, or lower tier. Having him do that while he has to get leads into the premiership and, oh yeah, they just bought another team, why not? Like, having him do all of that is too much. And it creates this discordance where we see, is John in charge? Is Kyle in charge? Or is Parag in charge? And in the course of a week, all three can feel like they're in charge for a day. And that's why you have this bouncing around. And it's just, this is when ownership matters. I would clean up this hierarchy, this depth chart really fast, because it's affecting the depth chart on the field, frankly.
That is a fascinating answer into the insight of the wheels of the 49ers and how they turn or don't turn in certain situations.
Yeah.
The Unfaithful Perspective, thank you very much for the super chat, says, this is why you got to watch the pressers yourself. John had no enthusiasm around the ongoing Brock talks. I'd use the word phlegmatic. That is not a word I would use. But I did say that when you look at the actual video of him talking about the Brock deal, he doesn't sound enthusiastic. The quote reads that way. But when you watch the video, he says, yeah, it's substantive talks has been a good direction.
Yeah, I listen, it's going to be painful for all parties. The only way that this comes out as a win for everybody is if everyone feels like they lose, because it's that much money. I'll say this, though. The most interesting thing was, you want to talk about reading into body language and energy and vibes and all that? He wanted nothing to do with the George Kittle contract question. He's like, nope, don't like that. Next question. Not verbatim, but in spirit. Whereas at least with Brock, it's like, we're working on it. I get the sense that everybody is just frustrated with the severity of the Brock situation. Like, no one wants to make a mistake on something this big. His agent doesn't want to make a mistake because this is the all-time payday. He doesn't want to do wrong by Brock. The Niners overtly, they've discussed this publicly, feel some sort of responsibility towards Brock.
Right.
It ain't your fault that no one else wanted to draft him.
Right.
It's not,
is what it is.
This is not your fault. You don't owe him squat. You really don't. You know what you do? You owe him if you want him to continue to play for you. But you don't actually owe him for like overtime work. You know, you're not on the hook, you know. And so this idea of, we want to do right by right. Don't forgive. I'm so sick of the Niners doing this. We want to do right by our guys thing. Clearly, they're not doing right by their guys at this juncture anymore. When you were trying to establish a culture, when you come in and it's John and it's Kyle and you have been handed a big sack of you-know-what and you're being told to turn it back into the San Francisco 49ers gold, it's one thing to say, like, when we get good players, we're going to pay our good players good. Like, that's one thing to establish because you needed to get that out into the marketplace. Like, we're back. We are a flagship brand in the NFL. We are one of the biggest, we are one of the richest SOBs in this entire sporting universe. We got it, and we're ready to use it. We're taking the stick and we're waving it around. That is something they had to establish. That is not an issue anymore. No one questions if the 49ers, who are hosting the flipping Super Bowl, have the financial might to play in the big leagues. No one's questioning. I'm arguing over Jed York not spending enough money this year compared to the very high standard he has set in recent years. that he should have spent even more than that. I'm not asking for like the A's or the Pirates to spend just a little bit of money. I'm asking for the guy who's been spending all the money to spend even more money than that. So clearly the threshold of 49ers brand might and 49ers fiscal relevance is no longer in question around the league. So why are you trying to do right by your players? Do right by your team. And last year they got into so much trouble doing right by their guys, doing right by Christian McCaffrey, a contract that still makes no sense, doing right by Deebo Samuel last year for no good reason. They're doing right by all. Do right. Look where that got them. No good deed goes unpunished. And like last year, 6 of them went punished. So don't do right by your players anymore. Don't feel this onus. Negotiate out a contract. Brock Purdy is worth more than $50 million a year. That's what the market says.
Yes.
It doesn't matter. I don't care how much he's paid because it only matters what he does on the field. But that's what the market says he is. Do right by your checkbook. Do right by making sure you have your quarterback of the future. Pay him what he's worth. Don't spend more than you have to. All these things. But this idea of like indebtedness or, trying to establish a culture, that is all for the past. That was last decade. Now you got it. Now you got to be a little bit more ruthless. Now you actually need a little bit more Parag. But if you're going to get Parag, make sure he's there every day because otherwise you're getting all sorts of mixed messaging.
Well, and maybe what you just explains what I'm about to say. But like my whole thing with Brock was, if you want to say he's not worth the money and you want to trade him, I'm fine with that.
Yes.
But decide before free agency. Like,
yes,
do that.
Decide before the draft.
Right. Like,
give yourself a chance.
Yes. And if you just make a decision of we're going to either get this thing done by this date or we're going to trade him, that could solve a lot of their issues also. But they don't do that. And maybe it's because, like you said, the guy that ultimately can get a deal, Parag, is not around. And so they got to finagle all that crap.
And this is the other thing too. It's a big difference between so think about the difference between Brandon Ayuk last year and Trent Williams last year. Trent Williams is like, I don't have to show up to work at all. I could retire. I'm going to the Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. He was open. He's like, I don't really need a Super Bowl to justify anything I've done. Like, y'all can cut. You want to give me my money or not? Here's what I'm worth. This is the number. You either come to the number or you don't. I'm good either way.
Right.
That is a strong negotiation tactic. The person who wins negotiations is typically the one who can walk away from the table. Quarterbacks are the only position, save for maybe the Trent Williams of the world, where the quarterback's like, we can play this thing out. Every year I'm going to cost more. Brock Purdy's entire football life has been about people underestimating him. You don't think that he gets off on that a little bit? Like, oh, you're not going to pay me? Let's play. Let's do this. I was drafted last. I went to Iowa State. Like, let's do this thing. Like, I'm about it. I am 6 foot tall and the tallest shoes I have. Let's play. And the idea that Brock Purdy would be discouraged from doing a franchise tag route a la Kirk Cousins is laughable to me. That's guaranteed money. It's not in the 49ers' interest to do that if they believe in Brock Purdy, which they overtly say they do. And at some point, the contract's going to have to prove it. But if you want to play the franchise tag game with Purdy, I think both sides would be justified in doing that. And the fact that both sides can be justified in doing the franchise tag game puts all of the onus on the 49ers to put the money up, because then you have the cost certainty that you're alluding to, which is you want decision certainty. The Niners want cost certainty and decision certainty. I'm not saying that it needs to get done tomorrow. I'm not saying at this point it needs to get done by like the first week of August. He can miss a week of training camp. It's not going to matter. They didn't do anything in training camp last year. So the idea that there's this thing, but like, if Brock just wants to say we'll deal with it next offseason, franchise tag me, we'll deal with it, so be it. But at least let's get on the same page with that. And I do think that the Niners might be struggling with the concept that they don't hold a true deadline over Brock's head. And that Brock's out here buying like 12 trucks on whatever salary he had going on last year. So like, he'll be fine. Like, I don't think Brock is, too worried about paying his bills. Like, I really don't. He's got boot money. He's got, Toyota money. Yep. He's been working Alaska Airlines. Like, I think he's got a 2-bedroom apartment. Like, he'll be fine. Like, Brock Purdy is never planned for, I got bills I got to pay. I got a 20% APR on this thing. Like, he's fine. There's no issue there. So the idea that, he has to get it done. At some point, he'll feel the pressure. Like, that's not true. Kirk Cousins never felt the pressure. It worked out wonderfully for him. Mm-hmm. Dak Prescott never felt the pressure. It worked out wonderfully for him. this is a quarterback who's kind of in the Kirk Cousins, Dak Prescott realm, for being honest. Too good to get rid of, not good enough to just give the blank check to. And when we're in that situation, and this is what the franchise tag is for, and I really do think the Niners are struggling with the fact that Brock Purdy's might want to just run this thing all the way to the end, because at some point it might be $70 million a year, given the way that quarterback inflation's going.
Oh, it's going to be a fun offseason. I'll say that. Dieter,
I'm already sick of talking about it. We haven't even started the offseason yet. Let's talk about 6th-round linebackers. Come on.
Buckle up. More Brock talk is certainly coming, but I can't thank you enough for giving us so much of your time. Again,
it was so much fun.
Check out the Dieter and Hutch podcast. Become a member of their YouTube channel. Get access to their draft guide. It is the most fun draft guide, I promise you, that you can see.
Sick in the head. Sick in the head. We're all sick in the head.
Yes, we are, but I can't wait to hear it. I can't wait to hear.
Does any chime get more run over a 3-day period than that one? It's fantastic.
Pump it.
I don't even know what the NFL Network one sounded like.
Yeah, I don't really know either, but
that's wild. Okay.
I've got the one that
big ups to the ESPN chime. It's the ESPN, was it NBA on NBC, Baseball Tonight, and the ESPN Draft chime. Those are the big 3 in my mind.
They've been broadcasting the NFL Draft for 45 years.
If you ever need a great laugh and you're a sick in the head football fan, look up. It was like all-time NFL draft blunders. It was a cut they put together in like 2001 of just like bad picks and reactions. And it was Jets draft blunders.
Yeah, it's every year they air it. I love it. I look forward to it.
Jets draft blunders is my favorite YouTube video. Freeman McNeil, when they picked him, there's some guy in the crowd. And of course, back in the day when they just did it at Radio City, or even before that, like I think the Midtown Marriott, some guy goes, "Oh no!" That's my favorite part. It gets me every time.
Back then, the way they announced it was position first, and so
tight end,
right, fullback. Oh no! It's the best. You're right. I'm right there with you.
I'm gonna go watch that now.
Everybody should after you check out the Dieter and Hutch draft guide. Thank you so much, man. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Rob.